Welcome to the White Sox REKAP Podcast. I am Ryan McGuffey. So we're just past the halfway point of the 2025 MLB season. Almost hard to believe that we're into July and staring at the All-Star break. Well, we've learned some things about this iteration of the Chicago White Sox, and there's also some things we've yet to learn. I'm going to take you through those things that I think we've learned about this season's White Sox team and the things that we need to still learn as we get to the back half of the season. Of course, the White Sox REKAP Podcast is brought to you by and proud to partner with, as always, the Illinois Tollway and their If Only campaign. We've all said it before, if only I had slowed down. The Illinois Tollway's new campaign is called If Only, and it's a powerful reminder that speeding doesn't just put you at risk, it affects everyone on the road. Every crash leaves someone wishing they had done things differently, so take the extra time, slow down, save lives. Lives, including yours, depend on it. And of course, folks, this is a holiday weekend as we tape this, and we ask you to be responsible, think smart, drive smart, and slow down. So we put it all in a blender and we spit out what we've learned about the 2025 White Sox at the halfway point and what's still to come for the 2025 season, as we have lessons still to be learned, and how do they take those into the offseason as we look forward to the 2026 White Sox and beyond. It's the White Sox REKAP Podcast with me, Ryan McGuffey, and it starts right now. All right, so what have we learned? Let's start there with the 2025 White Sox. A couple of things. Let's start with a positive. The White Sox have some young players that are worth hooking your wagon to. We start with Chase Meidroth, who a lot of us thought at the beginning of the season and in spring training that this guy should be up here. He should be here right away with opening day. And I didn't disagree with that, but I had heard that the White Sox thought near the end of spring training that he was trying to be a player. He was trying to go out there and will himself to be somebody rather than just go out and be a baseball player, try to get hits, etc. They wanted him to go down to AAA, be himself, come up here, and then do it at the major league level. He's been up and down of late, but when you look at Chase Meidroth is showing that he's a player. I wouldn't say a dude, is showing you that he is a player for the foreseeable future on the Chicago White Sox. Offensively, as we tape this, he's hitting .260 with an on-base around .350. He's a one-WAR player, probably playing a little bit out of position at times at shortstop. But in terms of taking pitches and working at bats, I think ideally he's probably a super utility all over the infield type of guy that hits near the bottom of your lineup and is just a pest for pitchers to want to deal with once they get near the bottom of the lineup. A guy who will take pitches, a guy who will push the ball the other way when need be. Chase Meidroth is that guy. Edgar Caro and Kyle Teel, let's put them both out there, okay? From a power standpoint, we have not really seen it, but I think from a quality at bat standpoint and who these guys at least appear to be. Now, Caro more than Kyle Teel because Caro's been up here the bulk of the 2025 season. But when you look at Edgar Caro's splits and you see the type of clutch situation he's been in at times, he's got almost 200 at bats, 259. Like I said, him and Meidroth, the averages have slipped. The on base is there, 16 walks as we record this. That's another thing I like about our guy, Chase Meidroth. When you look at Chase Meidroth is a 28 walk, 37 strikeout as we record. That's exactly what we thought he would be. He had a high 400 on-base percentage in the minor leagues a year ago. Sometimes that doesn't translate at that high of a level once you get to the major leagues. But Edgar Caro is a guy I'd like to see more power. No homers. He does have almost 20 RBI. But I was expecting a little bit more pop. Kyle Teel, we saw the pop from Kyle Teel down in the minor leagues. He's yet to show. Now, granted, it's only been about 50 at-bats or so. In the big leagues, I like what I've seen from a patient standpoint with him. He had a big game-winning hit to win that series against the Giants. Okay? So those are three – and we know Kyle Teel kind of has to be a dude. Him and Braden Montgomery got to really be dudes. Braden Montgomery going to the futures game. I think that trade, even though Garrett Crochet has shown to be one of the top 3 pitchers in the game, I've talked about that trade at length on this podcast. They had to move him. I really think they had to move him. Ships in the night. It looks like the return for that trade right now looks to be very good. I can't call it great, but when you got, and Wickham and Gonzalez was up 3 of the 4 players already at the big league level in that trade, and the star of that trade is going to the futures game. I think right now you got to like that return. So that's a thing that we've learned. I think that the Garrett Crochet return right now looks good. I'd like our catchers to have more pop. I'd like them to be better defensively. When you look at the metrics, they're both near the bottom at framing, etc. But that comes with time. People forget sometimes that Edgar Caro's 22 years old. Pitching. I'm going to get back to the offense. This team can pitch. Brian Bannister and Ethan Katz are clearly assets to the Chicago White Sox. A lot of people were crushing Katz in the offseason saying, well, why does he get to keep his job? Look at what he's done. Sean Burke was the opening day starter for this team. He had 19 career innings pitched going in. They have holes, and I worry a little about the second half of the season with some of these guys who have never thrown 100 career innings. Shane Smith, while the last 3 starts haven't looked all that great, when you give up 18 runs in your first 13 career starts and you're a Rule 5 guy and there are people around the league saying this guy's stuff is going to translate going forward, that's a win. That's an absolute win. And as we record this, he's, to me, by a narrow margin, is still the White Sox All-Star. Adrian Hauser is trying to vie and say, hold my beer. I just don't think he's got enough. He's going to barely have 50 innings pitched at the All-Star break. But speaking of Adrian Hauser, another example of the White Sox front office saying, there's a lottery ticket. Let's go and scratch it off and ship it elsewhere for another lottery ticket that could help us in the future. Because I think Adrian Hauser is definitely getting traded. A sub-2 ERA, that's a win. Aaron Savali, what we've learned about the White Sox front office is that they're not going to sit on their hands. Maybe in some ways that the previous regime did. Sending Andrew Vaughn to the minor leagues was a eye-opening moment for a franchise that really has not played that way. It was the beginning of the end for Andrew Vaughn, and rather than release him after the trade deadline, they found a taker in the Brewers when a player like Savale, who has been just okay as a White Sox, said, I want out. Well, the White Sox said, we're going to ship Andrew Vaughn to the Brewers because we think the return we could get for Savale could be better than what we could get for Andrew Vaughn. And I commend them for that, regardless of what happens to Savale. Another thing that we've learned is that this front office is not going to wait for certain statuses to kick in. Super 2, even though they do care about it. Or we're going to set this guy. We're only bringing him up after the All-Star. No. They have brought up a ton of guys. We've seen a lot about what they have in the immediate going forward. And I love that. I love that they're not afraid to call up players when it's their time. When they brought up Mydroth and Caro early in the year, I was like, let's go. I thought Kyle Teel would be an after the All-Star break guy. No, let's go. Tim Elko, you wanted him. He's been up and down. I think Tim Elko, after the All-Star break, should be up here for the rest of the year and just see what you got. We've learned that this front office is different. It's not equaled wins and losses, okay? Their record is better. They've won 8 series in the first half, which is more than all of last year, which is insane, by the way, because they're still the worst team in the American League. But that's because offensively, they're terrible. What we've learned is they are still a very bad offensive team. They are last in about every category in the big leagues. They're last in OPS. They're last in batting average. They're second to last in on-base percentage. They're last in slugging. That's awful. That's got to be better. But I will say their talent's not good enough. When you go up and down, and a lot of it's just getting here, by the way. So that's another thing. A lot of their talent is literally just getting here. The Kyle Teals. You still got the Mydros. But when you had a lineup out there, you were throwing guys like Nick Matan, Joshua Palacios. Andrew Benintendi's been good at times. Like Andrew Benintendi's, he's just kind of stuck in the middle. I mean, they had Jacob Amaya. God. Vinny Capper shouldn't even be on a big league roster. I thought Jacob Amaya was bad. He's bad. I mean, Jacob Amaya is gone, but Vinny Capper is not much better. This team is not built to win offensively. Andrew Vaughn was terrible. He was almost a -2 WAR player, by the way. And we learned that Luis Robert stinks. That's what we've learned. Back on the IL, I personally do not believe that the White Sox should have Luis Robert Jr. on their roster after the trade deadline, regardless of what that means. And that's what I want to. I've learned that this front office is different, that they're not afraid to send a former number 3 overall pick down to the minors or cut bait with him, that they're not afraid to call guys up, see what they've got. And I'd like for them to finish this off and say, you're not afraid to cut the fat of the last failed rebuild. That's what I would like to see. I don't care about his player options anymore. I don't want to hear about his ceiling or his MVP type talent. I have learned everything I need to know about Luis Robert Jr. I am not a big fan of making personal attacks at one person, and I don't think this is personal. When you're hitting 185, you stink. When you have a OPS lower than 600, you stink. Yes, you have 22 stolen bases. When Luis Robert Jr. is a -0.1 WAR player and a 65 OPS plus player, you stink. The back of your baseball card shows inconsistency, and the rest of the league knows it. You were hoping that he would soar for 3 months so you could get a return. It didn't happen. Trim the fat, cut the bait. That's what I want to learn. I guess in theory, as I spread to all fields here, that's still part of what we need to know about the 2025 White Sox. How do they handle Luis Robert? That's probably first and foremost because we only have a few more weeks until the trade deadline, and we need to know, how are they going to treat Luis Robert Jr.? Because he does have these two team options that could be attractive. So do you roll the dice another time? Because we all know defensively when he's on the field and when he's on the base path, he's a force. Okay, fine. He's an albatross in the middle of your lineup. He looks lost at most of the times, like he's tuned out or cared free at other times. Is there anybody else out there, as I yell to you, either on YouTube or if you're listening on audio form, is there anybody else out there who feels like me? Just cut the bait. I'm done with the old regime. I'm done with the old rebuild. It failed. Cut it loose. This is another proof of that. He's a failure. He's the best of the failed, which is insane. Luis Robert Jr. is the best of the fail. Bye-bye. It's time to move on. You're going to ask me, well, then who plays center field? Right now, I don't care. Let Brooks Baldwin just go out there and eat every day. I don't care. I don't see Michael A. Taylor getting traded. So write him out for the rest of the year. Figure out center field because I don't really care. You're not going to be good. And it's not like you're competing for a spot. But I would like to show that the young guys who are part of this going forward and who are doing this together as a pitching staff and position players, that now in the second half, this is your team. Show us who you are and who you want to be going forward. So when we bring the other guys up, they understand this is the culture and here's how it's going to be. one more thing of what we've learned. You might not agree with this, but I think Will Venable is the right hire. I think it's very clear that this team has responded to their manager. I think it's very clear that this is a communicative coaching staff that collectively they have input, which you would think is elementary, but I'm telling you, in coaching staffs of the past, it wasn't the case here. And that's not because they didn't want that. That's because the person in charge made it that way. And we've heard all of the stories about the Pedro Grifol era. We've heard Clint Frazier out there saying players didn't give a crap. We know who they are. It's the same guys I've been telling you going back to my NBC days. When I told you about Eloy Jimenez and he was a big fail, one of the biggest fail, it's because I was right. I got all that backlash about Eloy. Tell me I'm wrong. He's done. Yoan Moncada is done. And if Luis Robert Jr. keeps it up, he's done too. I wasn't wrong, folks. Yoan Moncada, 30 games. You know what's funny? He actually has an 841 OPS, which is the second highest of his career. He's played 30 games. Typical. Yoan Moncada, not playing. The best ability is availability. He's coming off this is 3 weeks ago. He's coming off the IL Friday. IL. These guys all have IL attached next to their names. Every single one of them. You think the Tampa Bay Rays, who signed Eloy in the offseason, who are kicking butt, care about Eloy Jimenez, whether he's going to be part of this team? I'm not going to. You know what? Here, my bad. I've turned left on this podcast. Will Venable ain't putting up with it. He's not here to be a bridge to the next manager. Whether that happens or not, that's down the line. He's here to build a culture with the young core that's here and coming to say, here's the new way with White Sox baseball. Now, you're going to go, Guff, what are you talking about? They're 28 and 57 as you tape this. This is the second half of the year. Well, they've won more series, okay, already this year. Their bullpen, they don't have a closer. They have a bunch of young guys that feed off of each other in the rotation that have been banged up at times. Cannon's back. Davis Martin, who's been the model of consistencies here. Adrian Hauser, I like. Martin Perez is coming back in the second half, which originally thought was a trade candidate. Now, if he can just eat up innings for you and save that young staff down the stretch, that's a good thing. That's a good thing. But when you look at this team, at home, they're holding serve. Last year at home, they were 23 and 58. This year, they're 5 games under. They need to be better away from the ball. They need to be a better road team, but most bad teams are bad on the road. They're okay against teams over 500. They're 16 and 28. They were 18 and 63. I'm sorry, 23 and 90. 23 and 90 against teams above 500 a year ago. 23 and 90. They need to be better in one-run games. But when I see you're not good in one-run games, it tells me you just don't have a dependable or reliable bullpen. They have a lot of projects. They don't have a lot to trade. I think Cam Boozer and maybe a couple other parts. I'm curious to find out what they do with Mike Vassell, who's been a very great bright spot. Another Rule 5 find. Does a team trade or call about Mike Vassell in a trade? I think yes. And do you entertain it? I think you have to entertain all of that, especially in the bullpen. But I think they look at Vassell as a possible starter down the line. So we'll see. What do we still need to know about the 2025 White Sox? Colson Montgomery, we need to know about him. Yes, he's had a recent hot streak at Charlotte. Let's get him up here. I think Colson Montgomery and Tim Elko, when they come here, I think they should be here the rest of the year, regardless of how they do. If they hit 110, fine. You need to know at the end of the season exactly what you have and the pieces you have here. If Colson Montgomery is not your starting shortstop of the future, you need to know that. Does that impact how the White Sox draft coming up here shortly? Yes, but it also can impact how they draft next year. When you know exactly what you have That's going to be a huge help. The White Sox are going to be in a much better position October 1st of 2025 than they were a year ago, when it seemed like, what the hell is going on? At least their cupboards are starting to show themselves. The fruits of their labor are starting to show themselves, good and bad. By the way, if Colson Montgomery comes up here, hits 170 and strikes out 85 times in the second half, you might know about him. You might know he might just not be a guy. He fell all the way down, almost out of the top 100 in the latest MLB pipeline update. But I think he did that. You earned that. He was way up, and now he's way down. Who is he? We got to know. That you have to know. You need to know about your future pitching staff going forward. I think they know a lot. I think Shane Smith's going to be here. I think Sean Burke's going to be here. He's got the walk. Davis Martin's. I'm curious, but he's injured. The idea of him being traded, you can hear him. He joined me on the podcast a couple of weeks ago. Really good stuff. I think he's here. There's zero reason to me to trade from your strength, which is starting pitching. You need about 8 to 10 of those guys. Noah Schultz, I think we've learned he's going to the futures game. We need to know more about Hagen Smith. Hagen Smith hasn't pitched much. Folks. He's pitched 8 games this year. Is that a concern? Yes. Need to know about Hagen Smith. He did finally, actually, as I taped this, just pitched this past week. He pitched an inning and 2/3. The only good thing about it is he had pitched, his last appearance was May the 10th. So we need to know more about Hagen Smith and his availability going forward. Braden Montgomery, I don't expect him to be here. I don't think he should be here this year. Let him keep eating. Let that kid cook, because I think he's going to be a big player, big future in the outfield for the Chicago White Sox. And then we need to know, I don't think the White Sox will be, and Chris addressed this last homestand, kind of talked in circles a little bit. He sat here on this couch and said eventually there will be a 9-figure deal with the White Sox. God, I hope so. Had to kind of get that out of him, but I believe him. I don't think it's coming next year. I do think they're going to have to spend some money to offset. You can't just keep being this bad offensively. You just can't keep trotting out Vinny Capras and Joshua Palacios's and Michael, guys that would not be on rosters at other big league clubs. You can't have 3 of those players on your everyday lineup. So we need to know going forward that can't happen. Even if that means Tim Elko is not part of the 27 and beyond team, then let him be part of the 26 team. Daniel Palco was that guy. Daniel Palco was here for like a year and a half. Nicky Delmonico. Find those guys within and let them just play and get you to where you need to be so you can spend money in 27 once that labor situation's figured out. We need to know that after 2025, that there's no more 100-loss seasons in the future. I don't think at some point you have to draw the line. You can't be like, well, we're 60, 61 and 101 next year. No. You have to have something in yourself that says 95 loss team, at least. Can't keep trotting out 100 loss teams. We need to know that after this year. It's very, very clear they're a destination for pitching. So sign a guy to a multi-year deal. Sign a guy next year to even if he's older, that's fine. Adrian Hauser, he's going to thank the White Sox for a long time after he gets dealt. Probably signs a new deal because of it. So we need to know the White Sox are committed to now taking what they've learned in 2025. Certainly, I think that they've shown that they've learned in 2024 what they need to do in 2025. They had to trade Crochet, get a new manager. It was still going to lead to a lot of losses. Their talent was still not good enough offensively. Their bullpen was They need to sign at least some guy that's flippable at the back end of their bullpen, in my opinion. Grant Taylor looks like that dude. I think we've learned that Grant Taylor is a dude. If he's going to be a bullpen guy and not a starter, we need to know that in the second half. And I think you need to invest in one guy after this year, even if you flip him. But at some point, you need to invest in what the plan is going forward and not just flip. I think we need to know at the end of the 2025 season a little clearer idea of what the plan is. I've been saying publicly for a while that I don't expect this team to contend until at least 2027. My definition of contend would be wild card berth, that you're not selling at the deadline. I think we've learned in summation that there's actually some likable things going on at 35th and Vec, 35th and Shields. I think we've learned that this time last year, there was a lot of more anger and disgust. There should be anger. I get the anger. We've learned that Justin Ishbia, there's a path, forgot this part, that there is a path to an ownership change. It's very clear and present. It won't happen before 2029, but we've learned that for the first time since 1981, there's a path. That's a big deal. All of these things to me are positives. I knew this record. I knew the team was going to be garbage on like wins and loss wise. That's why I had 53 wins. 53 wins is what my prediction was for this team. And just so we're clear, this team is on pace for 53 wins as we tape this. It's funny. I did not know that. They're on pace for 53.4 wins. If you go back to our prediction podcast, I had them as a 53-win ball club. Well, that's a lot, but I think it's a good thing. I feel much better doing this podcast, knowing what I know, than I did when the season started. I was like, man, I just don't know. I just don't know. And I'd like to know, by the way, if Colson Montgomery comes up here, or he's coming up, he should play every single day. We should know a lot more about him. And I should give a hat tip. I didn't even mention Miguel Vargas' name. I still need to know more about Miguel Vargas because I loved him in May, didn't like him in June. We gave him I think it was a kind of a pass in June because of what he did in May. Oh, look, he changed his hands. I think we still need to know more about Miguel Vargas. I think he's very clearly here for the future. It's much better than we felt about him at the end of last year. And Lenyn Sosa, a little hat tip to you because he's actually been a pretty decent player for the White Sox. I always called him a 4A player. He's a 98 OPS plus, league average is 100. So maybe he's league average, but he leads the White Sox in a lot of offensive categories. That's not saying a lot. I know he's got an on-base percentage under 300. I know, but a hat tip to Lenyn Sosa. We're very proud to partner with the Illinois Tollway as always and their If Only campaign. It's a new campaign that we've all said before, if only I had slowed down. Called If Only, it's a powerful reminder that speeding doesn't just put you at risk. It affects everyone on the road. Every crash leaves someone wishing they had done things differently. So take the extra time, slow down, save lives including yours. Depend on it. I remind you again that it's a holiday weekend. I hope that you're safe. I hope you're listening to this traveling. And I hope you feel good about what we've learned about the 2025 White Sox and what we still need to learn for the second half of the season. Brian Anderson will join me next week on another edition of the White Sox Recap Podcast. He will be a part of the 2005 20th reunion, so I can't wait to hear the behind-the-scenes stories of the Mark Burley statue unveiling and the weekend that will be with most of the team. If you've not seen the list, most of that team will be in Chicago, July 11th through the 13th. Looking forward to that and catching up with some of those guys after the fact here on the podcast to talk about that weekend. We appreciate you watching here on YouTube on the recap. Every time we drop new content, make sure you subscribe and click that notification bell so you are alerted every time news breaks or we drop fresh content, which is literally every single day. And if you listen to audio form, we're there for you too. We appreciate you on Apple, Spotify, and wherever you listen to podcasts. For everyone here at the recap, I'm Ryan McGuffey. We appreciate the Illinois Tollway, our proud partner here on the White Sox Recap Podcast. We'll see you next time on the White Sox Recap Podcast. I'm Ryan McGuffey. Take care.